It's Thursday, the 6th of June, 2024. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories, 5 minutes. Let's get going. Story number 1 is a huge one. The annual pace of economic growth has fallen to just 1.1%, the slowest rate in more than 30 years outside the pandemic.
And once again, Michael, on a per capita basis, growth went backwards. That's 5 quarters in a row when that's happened. For the March quarter, the economy grew by 0.1% on the back of government spending, a build-up in inventories, and a somewhat surprising jump in consumption that reflects higher spending on necessary household items like electricity and rent, that type of stuff. The long-run average for economic growth in Australia is sort of 2.75%, 3%, thereabouts. We're talking about 1.1%. It just demonstrates how weak yesterday's figures were. In terms of the different parts of the economy, households are spending much more on essentials, less on discretionary items. There was actually a Taylor Swift F1 blimp during the March quarter. Government spending remains strong. Mostly they're spending in health and energy. Residential investment is still weak. Business investment had been strong. It fell sharply during the quarter. There was a build-up of inventories that actually adds to growth. There's a jump in imports as well. That takes away from growth. The household savings rate fell to less than 1%, which is a pre-pandemic level. Treasurer Jim Chalmers said the GDP figures this quarter, the June quarter, are also likely to be weak.
All right, so this week number, Sean, I imagine adds ammunition to those who are calling for rate cuts sooner rather than later. That is, of course, up to the Reserve Bank. The governor of the Reserve Bank, Michelle Bullock, was before Senate estimates yesterday. What did she say?
Once again, she said the Reserve Bank will raise rates if it fears inflation is getting out of control and not heading back towards its preferred 2 to 3% target band. When asked whether she'd lift rates during an election campaign, she said the board would always put inflation at the forefront of its decision-making, and if the data says it needs to move on rates, whichever way that is, it will. Ms. Bullock also said that she preferred quarterly inflation figures to monthly data. Now, last week, April figures showed a rise in inflation. She also said that the federal government's $300 energy rebate and other state government rebates will broadly be ignored when the Reserve Bank's thinking about inflation and interest rates. Bottom line, economy is still on a narrow path of getting inflation back under control without job losses, but there are plenty of uncertainties out there.
Sean, story number 2, how about this one? Australia's privacy watchdog will take legal action against Medibank Private for failing to protect the medical details of 9.7 million Australians, which were accessed by Russian cybercriminals in 2022.
The fines in the civil action could theoretically exceed $21.5 trillion. In proceedings filed in the federal court, the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner alleges contraventions of the Privacy Act for each of Medibank's 9.7 million customers. There's a maximum civil penalty of $2,220 for each contravention, hence that massive number. Ain't going to happen. Still interesting. Medibank said it's going to defend the proceedings. The office alleges Medibank failed to take reasonable steps to protect personal information it held, given its size, resources, the nature and volume of the sensitive and personal information it handled and the risk of serious harm for an individual in the case.
Story number 3, there could be a shortage of eggs, Sean, available on supermarket shelves in coming days and weeks after more than 600,000 laying hens were culled in an effort to limit the spread of avian flu.
There have now been 3 cases in Victoria, though fortunately the strain of bird flu is different from the one spreading wildly in parts of the US. There are more than 21 million hens in the national egg flock and more than 100 egg farms in Victoria. The 600,000 will make up about 3% of the brood. The impact is already hitting retailers, though industry members said customers can shop around and still find eggs. Just a couple of interesting facts here, Michael. New South Wales and Queensland produce about 266 million dozen eggs each year. Victoria, about 85 million dozen eggs.
Now, Sean, story number 4, US retailers, having spent 3 years pushing prices higher, are now lowering them in an effort to attract price-conscious consumers.
Let's hope it happens here. Pharmacy group Walgreens last week said it will lower prices on 1,000 items. Target recently announced price cuts on 5,000 food products and household goods. A couple of months ago, Walmart introduced a private label. 70% of products will be less than $5. IKEA is doing the same. This is all according to a New York Times report. During the recent March quarter earnings update, some companies said they plan to slow price increases and find other ways to make profits. Starbucks and Coca-Cola, for example, have reported flat sales volumes. Fast food group Wendy's earlier in the year floated the idea of pricing goods differently depending on what time of the day it was. Hasn't happened. Interesting concept. Even McDonald's is struggling. It's facing a consumer backlash because the average cost of a Big Mac has gone from $4.39 5 years ago to $5.29 today.
Last one, Sean. Story number 5. De Beers is synonymous with diamonds, of course, but now wants to become known as a retailer, competing with the likes of Cartier and Tiffany.
In an interview with the Financial Times, the head of De Beers says he aims to transform the diamond miner into a leading luxury retailer following its worst year in more than 2 decades. Chief Executive Al Cook says the future of diamonds is way beyond mining. De Beers suffered from a big slump in diamond sales last year, high interest rates, inflation, but also plenty of competition from synthetic lab-grown gemstones that hit demand. The company reckons that $4.5 billion of cheaper lab-grown diamond sales deprived mined diamonds of about $7 billion worth of sales. De Beers is going to target India. It's now the second largest diamond market. Of course, until a week ago, De Beers could well have been part of BHP, but its owner, Anglo American, rejected BHP's bid.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Thursday, the 6th of June, 2024. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.